When we think about addictions, we immediately picture the usual suspects: drugs, alcohol, gambling, or even the endless scrolling on our phones. And the universal assumption is that the problem begins with the substance or the behavior itself. We also tend to assume that people who develop these habits are simply chasing a high, that they are wired to pursue pleasure, regardless of the cost. But according to physician and author Dr. Gabor Mate, pleasure is secondary. The primary drive behind these behaviors is the attempt to escape pain. Our whole cultural view of addiction is reversed. In this framework, the individual is running away from suffering. If we look closer, we see a person trying to self-medicate a very specific, invisible wound. That wound is emotional pain, a lingering hurt that often takes shape years, sometimes decades, before a person ever picks up a drink or a smartphone. Because the behavior serves as a temporary shield against that pain, taking the substance away leaves the person completely exposed. Without addressing why they are hurting, the brain will naturally return to whatever offered relief. To find a lasting solution, we have to look past the visible habit and track the impulse back in time to locate the original emotional wound. When most of us hear the word trauma, we immediately picture extreme, visible events. We think of soldiers experiencing the horrors of combat. We think of violence, severe abuse, or the physical devastation left behind by a natural disaster. Mate argues that this definition is incomplete. He identifies a second, hidden category. Trauma is not strictly defined by what happened to a person. Sometimes trauma is what was missing: a childhood that lacked safety, reliable emotional support, comfort, or a deep sense of connection. The prolonged absence of critical psychological needs creates an emotional void that acts exactly like a physical injury. Imagine a 5-year-old growing up in a house where the parents are constantly fighting. The air is thick with chronic shouting and tension. A child that young lacks the capacity to process adult stress. They don't understand financial strain or relationship breakdowns. Instead, they internalize the conflict, often concluding that the chaos is somehow their own fault. That internalized blame creates a hidden emotional wound. Even if the adult has no clear memory of those arguments, the brain continues to carry the emotional burden of that environment. The human brain is hardwired to avoid suffering. If you touch a burning hot stove, your hand violently flinches away before you even have time to think. The brain demands immediate escape from physical pain. Emotional pain operates on that exact same biological circuitry. An unhealed childhood wound acts as a continuous internal burn, forcing the adult brain to instinctively grab onto any available source of relief just to survive the day. Researchers decided to test this dynamic by studying people struggling with severe addiction, looking specifically at how they experienced both pleasure and pain. This chart maps pleasure affinity against emotional pain intensity. The data reveals that these individuals do not have a higher than average capacity for pleasure. Instead, there is a dramatic spike in how intensely they experience emotional pain compared to the baseline. The chronological data shows that this severe suffering existed for years before the addictive behavior ever appeared on the timeline. The crucial shift occurs when a substance or a behavior momentarily erases that prolonged agony. For a few minutes, the anxiety and emptiness vanish, teaching the brain a highly effective yet incredibly dangerous solution. Addiction is an adaptive survival mechanism. It starts as a desperate, initially successful attempt to regulate an unbearable level of suffering. We see millions of people today who hit all the traditional markers of success: good jobs, degrees, perfectly curated online profiles. Yet they carry an internal reality of emptiness, anxiety, and deep exhaustion. Because this type of emotional pain is invisible, society tends to ignore the root cause. Instead of offering genuine healing, our culture provides a massive infrastructure of socially acceptable distractions. People reach for habits to cope: endless scrolling on social media, compulsive shopping and consumerism, or extreme corporate workaholism, each acting as a microdose of relief from a quiet hum of dissatisfaction. We are living through a hidden epidemic where millions of people are functionally addicted to behaviors that simply help them escape their own unmet psychological needs. Understanding this requires a change in how we judge the struggles of those around us, and even our own. When someone's life is spiraling, the traditional response is to ask, "What's wrong with you?" Dr. Mate suggests a more empathetic alternative. What happened to you? But that brings us to a massive, lingering question. If these behaviors are just coping mechanisms, why do they become so completely impossible to resist, even as they tear a person's life apart? Once a behavior successfully numbs that pain, it triggers the brain's dopamine system, effectively rewiring the neural pathways of survival. Psychological pain lights the match, but chemical biology builds the prison. In the next chapter, we'll look at how that architecture is formed and why willpower is often powerless against it.